Hi, and welcome to another episode of Prevailing Through Pain, where our healthcare hero today is Dr. Crystal Foster. Crystal Foster is a family physician here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Thank you for being on our podcast today, Dr. Foster.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Foster, I'm just going to jump right on in. If you can tell us a little bit about your humble beginnings.
Okay, sounds good. And you can call me Crystal, please.
I'm so used to saying Dr. Foster to be
Right?
hard.
No, understandable. So I'm originally from Prince George's County, Maryland, and grew up in a two-parent household. My parents are actually still together and married, just celebrated 50 years
Oh,
of marriage this
wow.
past year. I have an identical twin sister. Not many people could say that. And it was just the two of us in our home. So we grew up surrounded by family because both of my parents are originally from Maryland and all of their family is still there. And so my childhood was really a fun and loving and a very good memory for me because of family and my parents.
So, an identical twin. So
Mhm.
actually, I just learned this, and I used to always say, I would love to have a twin. I bet that would be fun.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about some of the things that you and an identical twin sister did coming
Yes.
up.
Yeah. So it was fun. I will say that. I think a lot of people say the same thing, like, oh, that would be so cool to play tricks on other people. But so we were involved early on in acting and modeling and print work.
Really?
Yeah. So my mom actually had been a drama major in college and always wanted to be an actress. So when we came along and at 3 years old, we had some interest in performing and so she got us involved in that early on. So it was really cool because we got to go places and meet with directors and meet with different, producers. And, of course, everybody were, oh, they're such cute little twins, twin girls.
Yeah, when you said that, I thought that's kind of not fair in life for two people to be as pretty as you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But no, it was fun growing up when we were younger. But the funny thing about being an identical twin, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, is there's constant comparison, right? Because it's human nature for people to want to compare, trying to figure out like which twin, what can they identify in that twin to be able to distinguish them apart, right? So it might be, is that the taller twin, or is her hair longer? Or in our case, when I was about 7 or 8, I started gaining weight. So I end up being the chunky twin or the heavier
The
twin,
heavy twin.
and so it was not intentional, when family or friends would pick up on that, it wasn't to be malicious.
Yeah.
But as a kid, when you have somebody who looks just like you and they're comparing you to that person, you don't realize like that kind of sticks with you.
You
And so,
sound just like it and everything.
yeah, we
It,
sound alike, we look alike. Well, as we've grown older, it's easier to distinguish us apart, but sound alike, look alike, same laugh, same nuances in our voice. Like even to this day, if we call our parents and our parents aren't wearing their reading glasses, they will literally like, who's this? so, so we were very, very identical. Yeah. hmm
So did you play those tricks on people?
Funny thing is, no,
You did.
because the worst trick we ever played was switch seats in the same class. So
Hmm.
we ended up being in the same class a lot of the time, and we might switch seats, and the teachers would, the classmates would giggle. But in general, no, we never played any big pranks. It's not like I would go out with her boyfriend, she would go out with mine, or anything like that. So we didn't have the same taste in guys, so that's probably what probably happened. But we also had the same friends. We actually had the same friends growing up. We had a friend group and we were friends with all the same people. So we were really enmeshed in being identical twins.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell us more about the growing up, you and your, like any. I always ask about dark times. I mean, you said that growing up was fun. Were there any times, whether it was as a little girl or as a teenager, or that you can remember a dark period and how you overcame that?
Not actually. So there were some dark times in childhood with the comparison.
Mm.
So in fifth and sixth grade, my sister and I got into a fight, and she started calling me Piglet at school.
Mm.
I know. So she started it. And then people would say that, you have little haters. And so they would say that, and it, and so, and thankfully it didn't last long. It was
Hmm.
probably, end of fifth and most of sixth. And by middle school, that had gone away. But that sticks with you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then for me, the other thing too is we're both similar personalities. And we both can't talk at the same time, right? So I became the quiet twin, and she became the funny twin and the outgoing twin.
Hmm.
When we're similar personalities, it's just we can't talk at the same time. So I started looking for my own identity, right? And granted, I know other people, especially if you're in families with sisters or brothers who are, in families with brothers, you want your own identity from your sibling, but it is
Hmm.
so much more, in my opinion, deep when you have somebody literally the same age and looks just like you.
Hmm.
So I started this journey of trying to separate myself from her. That didn't happen actually physically until we were grown, like after medical school. Well, for medical school is the first time that we lived apart, but it changed the way that I saw myself, and I started looking for things that would make me different from her. And one of the things was I hit puberty earlier than her, like almost a
Hmm.
whole year earlier than her. And I started filling out. And when I started filling out, guys started paying me attention.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Like,
Yes,
no.
yes, exactly. I was like, she still looks like a little kid, but hi.
A woman.
Exactly, exactly. And they're paying me attention. And unfortunately, I do think that kind of shaped some of the choices I made later in life and some
Hmm.
of the self-esteem issues that I had later in life that I had to overcome. But so that was probably the darkest time in childhood, is this difference, this comparison. And the funniest thing is the people who compared us, again, this was not malicious. This was not something that my parents compared. My parents never
Right,
compared
right,
us,
right.
right? But it would be family members and it would be friends. And you just don't think about what you say and how people receive children, how children receive it.
I know.
So it's something that, as a family physician now, I'm very aware of,
Hmm.
how I say things to my pediatric patients, or how I say things
Right.
to my teenagers,
You
because you
know,
just never know.
it makes me think of when I was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
I remember even not understanding, not so much even what ugly and what pretty was, but looking at the reaction on this one woman's face. So I have a sister 11 months older than me. And my mother was standing there with her, and I'm just over there messing with stuff, like children do.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman says, "Oh, Donna, she is so beautiful," talking about my older sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so the woman's face was like happy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as a little kid, I'm running over and I'm grabbing my mother's leg. And the woman said, "That one's not yours, is it?" And I can remember that we were in a department store. I can remember the color coat my mom had on, because I always thought my mom was like a movie star.
Mm-hmm.
But that woman's face was like disgusted, and she's pointing at me.
Mm-hmm.
And, I, and that's how we were, even though we weren't twins.
Mm-hmm.
People would say, "Oh, she's so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe y'all need to do something with, can you help her with, do something different with her hair? Do something." Yeah, people just don't realize how that affects a child.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. That's
So
crazy.
I
That's so
know.
insane.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Oh, but yeah, so yeah, so but I will say in general the childhood was good. That was a trigger for me, and it remains a trigger for me
But
actually.
but I'm glad you're saying this, because some teenager, some little girl,
Mhm.
some little boy has a twin,
Yeah.
and so maybe that's what I'm just gonna do differently. I'm gonna be different.
Yes,
Find
yes.
your own identity.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. But I will say, aside from that,
Hmm.
a huge aspect of childhood was good. We were really reaffirmed by our parents. Parents were very intentional. They were intentional about when we were very little. I remember coming home from school, and they'd be like, "What did you learn from school today? How was school? What did you learn? Tell me what you learned." You know what I'm saying? And when they would read to us with expression, and so because of that, it really gave us this love for learning. You know what I'm saying? They were so involved in that. And it gave them pride every time that we would tell them what we learned, that it really fostered us wanting to be, um, not just doctors, but learners, lifelong
Hmm.
learners. So that was really good. My parents also made sure that even though we grew up in a two-parent household and we were safe and secure, right, with having them there, they didn't shelter us from the world. they would also be very intentional of talking to us about, things to be wary of, and
Mm-hmm.
keep your guard up when you're around certain people. Watch people. And I think
Mm-hmm.
also being in acting and modeling and stuff, you learn to watch people's faces and you learn to
Mm-hmm.
watch certain behaviors without really talking, right? So I think that was really helpful too as kids, because later on in adulthood, that would really play a role in not us just becoming physicians, but also becoming, in my opinion, relatable. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And in general, I think very effective with our relationships with patients in particular, and
Right.
with people in large, at large, because there are some nuances that people don't always pay attention to. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So it was a good job.
So interesting, because you said the acting, and so where did the medical piece come in?
So it's so funny. I joke that, when you ask kids when they're really little, what do they want to be when they grow up? And they usually say, I want to be a doctor, or a firefighter, or a police officer, lawyer, or something like that. And I feel like we said doctor, and my parents were so excited that it kind of stuck.
So
So,
did the both of you say that?
yeah, we both did. Yes. I remember vividly being really little, probably 3, and saying, and we both wanted to be doctors. And I think my parents at the time thought, it didn't change their mind eventually. But my dad served in Vietnam. And one of the things I'm convinced, he was exposed to Agent Orange, and he cannot feel pain. Like, he just doesn't feel pain. I don't think he's aware of that even at this age, but he cannot feel pain.
And you called it what?
Agent Orange.
Agent
Yeah,
Orange.
it was a spray that they would spray in Vietnam to kill the brush so they could see like the enemy. And unfortunately, a lot of veterans were exposed to it, and it is known now, but not at the time, all of the side effects that happened to it. And so,
Maybe my uncle has that. He was in Vietnam, and we're always saying,
no, seriously, there are so many consequences that happen as a
Mm-hmm.
result of that war and of the stuff that they used during that war. And so, but my dad has no pain receptors, and of course, I don't know. He might have had no pain receptors when he was a kid, but this man has no pain receptors, and he is a very hands-on man. So he used to like fix anything in the house. He's a fixer, and he could fix the car. He would fix stuff, underneath the sink, and he would cut himself and be bleeding all over the place. And it would be
And
my
keep
mom.
going.
I keep going, not even be aware. But my mom would be like, "Mouse, you bleeding all over my house," and he was like, "Oh, oh, shucks, I'm, cut myself." And so we would be the ones to help kind of bandage his wounds.
You playing doctor.
Yeah, playing doctor, yes. And I think the funny thing about it was, because he didn't sense pain, we didn't associate blood with pain, and so we weren't scared of it. You know what I'm saying? It actually made us feel like, oh, well, this is kind of cool. What else can we do? And then the other thing, he used to call himself Dr. Dad all the time, and we're like, oh, okay, if he can be a doctor, then
We can.
yeah, if he can fix anything, we can fix it too. So I think that's where the motivation came. But my mom was really instrumental, as we got older, of supporting that dream. They both wanted us to support, to support our dreams. But my mom actually would seek out opportunities for us to see other physicians work. And the ironic thing of this all is, we grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland. And if you don't know Prince George's County, Maryland, it is right outside Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And at one point, it used to be, and it might be now, one of the richest Black counties in the country, predominantly Black county in the country. But it wasn't like wealthy because of professionals. Like, I think of Atlanta as having a lot of Black doctors and lawyers, and DC has that now, and Maryland has that now. But when I was growing up, I didn't see any Black physicians. And so, and maybe I just, maybe
Didn't
we just
know.
didn't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, but I didn't see anywhere I grew up, and it was a Black area. And so she would seek out these opportunities, predominantly in and around DC, where we can meet other doctors. Some of them looked like us, most of them did not, because Howard University medical school is there, so there were Black doctors, especially in DC. So she would take us to these events, and a lot of the times the physicians would just talk about what they do. So we would get an understanding of what it was. Because keep in mind, this is before ER came out. This is before all these medical shows came out that made you have, some idea of what went on in the hospital. And so she sought that out. And I really think that reinforced to us that we wanted to do that. So by the time we went
That
to
says a
college,
lot about your mom, though.
man, my mom, I tell, she's phenomenal. So my mom came up at a time where her mother could not take care of her. My mom is one of 3 kids. Unfortunately, my grandmother had them when she was young. And my mom's dad, or my grandfather, divorced her very early on. So she was a single parent. And she had to work 2, sometimes 3 jobs to help take care of them. And so my mom had to go live with her grandparents because her mom just wasn't around. And so I think her mom also developed breast cancer at a young age. She had breast cancer at like 30. Developed breast cancer. My mom was only like 11 at the time, and she developed breast cancer. And this is in the 1960s, right? So treatment isn't very good.
Right.
And so she spent a large part of her childhood without having her mother there, not because her mother didn't want to be there, but she couldn't be there, right? For one reason or another. And so I think that shaped in my mom this intentionality of by the time she had us, she wanted to make sure she was there and present and, pushing us to be the best that we could be. So I say all that to say, I watched some of your earlier podcasts, and a lot of the things that people mention is like generational trauma and
Right.
generational curses. And I think as a culture, we need to reframe that word and say, generational lessons. And
I love that.
yeah,
Thank you. I
yeah,
will start using that.
yeah, because we all kind of learn from our experiences and choose to either parent or bring to the world what our experiences have been. And you can either learn from the people ahead of you who maybe not have had the same opportunities as you had, or you can recreate the same lessons, But at the end of the day, lessons that aren't learned are going to be repeated.
They
You know what I'm
aren't
saying?
they?
Yeah. So yes, I give my mom her flowers now. I tell her every day, thank you, Mom, for having that foresight. You know what I'm saying? Because most of us don't think about what really matters to children, and safety matters, feeling loved and
Right.
supported
Right.
matters. Not doing everything for them. Let me
Right.
say that.
Right.
You know what I'm
No,
saying? Because we are living in a
we can
generation.
handicap.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I look at like my generation,
Mm-hmm.
where my mother had 2 children by the time she was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And so grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
there were a few of us that our grandparents raised us because, the parents were so young. They were still trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then my generation, by the time, it's like I look at some of my cousins and whatnot, when they had children, it was not letting them fall, not letting them figure it out. My child is not going to have to go through what I went through. And I think sometimes we can hurt them, when we pad too much.
Yes, we handicap them.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things, and this is why I'm so thankful to both my parents. They always taught us about our history. They taught us where we came from. We knew we were slaves. We knew we were descendants of slaves.
Ooh, Dr. Foster, hold that. We're going to take a break
Okay.
for our sponsor, but I want to pick up on that.
Do you have a powerful story of perseverance? Have you triumphed over pain and want to share your story with the world? We're looking for inspiring guests to join us on the Prevailing Through Pain podcast. Head over to KarenShader.me/guest. Fill out the form and let us know your story. Your voice could be the one to inspire others. Your experience can be the one to lift up someone else. Go to KarenSherry.me/guest.
And we're back. So, Dr. Foster, we're getting ready to go into your parents making sure you knew your history, which I think is super important.
Yes, absolutely. So my parents definitely let us know that we came from slaves and we came through a lot of adversity, and if it wasn't for God first, always
God first.
God first,
Yes.
we would not have the resilience to get to where we are. And so because we know where we came from, one, God has you, because if he had us then, he has us now. And that two, it is our respect to our ancestors to keep moving forward, right? Keep moving forward. And one of the things we're talking about is when you take your childhood and say, for instance, I didn't have anything and I'm going to make sure my kids get everything that I never had. The things that matter in human resilience are not material things.
That's right.
It's not the clothes we may not have had, or even some of the money to do certain things. It is love, knowing that you are loved, teaching self-worth, and teaching independence. And that's one of the things that I think my generation is having a harder time with too, is that our children, every generation in general should be having a little bit less adversity than last, right?
Right.
And my children, oh gosh, I have to remind myself, oh no, you gonna wash that dish. You know what I'm you're gonna make up your I'm not doing everything for you because I am growing you up into a mature, responsible adult. That is my job.
Right.
And if we don't recognize like this is part parenting with intention is partly giving them a lot of their own independence and responsibility and not doing everything for them, then we grow up with a generation of adults who don't know how to do anything.
Right.
And don't know how to be resilient when life hurts us. Because
I
life
know.
will.
It will.
Nobody's safe from that. You know what I'm saying?
Something funny. Well, it's not funny, it's sad, but I was on the phone with my sister the other day, and she was telling her grandson that he actually he lives with his dad, but he was over her house, and he has a bedroom over there. So she was telling him to pick up something. He said, "Isn't the housekeeper coming tomorrow?" She said, "Boy, if you don't go in there," and I'm on the phone saying, but it's the truth, you know.
Yes, yes,
What is your role in whatever it is that you did, whatever you have? Yeah, and so I do. I think it's really important. What you said, each generation should have more, do better, and I am so excited from where I came from to see, like even with having an African American physician, a contractor, or whatever, we've come a long way. But with that being said, with each generation that we're raising, we still, where you said, have to teach them those values, and that everything doesn't come easy because you are going to be told no.
Absolutely.
And how are you going to be able to handle when you're told no?
Yes, 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 yes. No, I agree. So it's so funny. I think about, my childhood, and even though my parents were amazing and they did show us love and they taught us responsibility and self-worth, it was when I became an adult and out of the safety and protection of their home that life really started teaching me, okay, listen, you can't just hear what they had to say. You have to believe this in yourself because so after I left home, I went to Hampton University, went to
Okay.
HBCU for college, enjoyed it, had a great time. And at this point in my life, through Hampton, I had always been around people of color, right? I grew up in an area that had a lot of color. I went to HBCU. After Hampton, I go to medical school, and medical school is not an HBCU medical school, right? So, and now I'm not only surrounded by people who don't necessarily look like me, but before I came to medical school, I was used to doing really well, like straight A's in high school, top of the class in college. Well, not the top of the class, but towards the top of the class, top 10, okay? But doing really well. And then being supported by my teachers. Because I will say this is one thing I did experience. When teachers know you love to learn, they in turn love to teach. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more rewarding for them to see a student who really has this knack for learning. So up until medical school, I had that. And then I go to medical school. And everybody in medical school were top of their class. Everybody in medical school were smart. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's used to doing well. And now I'm like, okay, am I an imposter? Am I supposed to be here? Like, am I as good as they are? Like, that was the first time in my life I ever
You started
questioned.
doubting.
Yes, I started doubting myself. And I neglected to mention this. So my sister is also a physician. We both went to medical school, but that was the first time we separated. So we had.
I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where did she go?
She went to University of Maryland.
Okay.
And I went to University of North Carolina. And so that not having, because one of the things that I mentioned earlier about having this identical twin is the comparison. Well, we also had some, I would say, healthy competition too, right? Yeah. So look, I can't fix, me having maturity or going through puberty before she did, but I can compete with her on these grades.
Right,
You know what I'm
right.
saying? Like, and one of the things I was talking to my sister about is it wasn't necessarily a competition as who could be the best, but I don't want to be the last. I don't want to be the worst. You know what I'm saying? So we motivated ourselves when we were in college to do really well. And ironically, we finished right behind each other, like on the ranking, like 7 and number 8. We were right behind each other. But then we go off to medical school and we're in this whole different environment. We don't have each other to kind of bounce things off of. And we're both experiencing the same thing at the same time, which is essentially like, am I supposed to be here? And so I always say that compare, well, there is a saying, comparison is a thief of joy. And when I was in this new environment, I started comparing myself to the other people there and started wondering, am I supposed to be here? Well, the devil, oh man, the devil will latch on to all of your self-doubts and start refeeding that, right? So medical school was initially very challenging for me because I needed to realize that who I was is who God put me here, right? This is part of what this journey is. This is part of my calling. And I was quickly forgetting that with, just how difficult everything was. But thankfully, God has always been a part of my life. But of course, our relationship grew in medical school because I needed him. Like I needed him. And so through that, he sent me a group of friends.
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you get?
Oh, yes. So I had a really great group of friends who also had felt very similar to me, and so we could bounce things off each other. And then they helped open my eyes because a lot of these friends had gone to PWI. So I had gone to HBCU and it was a very nurturing and smaller environment.
Right.
And now I'm at this PWI. My friends have been at PWIs and the ones who had gone had said, listen, everybody's in the same boat here. Don't let anybody intimidate you. These people were the same people who we went to school with too.
He's like, yes, my people, my group.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. They were so motivating and really we supported each other throughout our whole medical school tenure. So it was awesome. It was really awesome.
I didn't go to college till I was 30.
Oh.
And this is working on an associate's degree at 30. And I remember saying, oh my God, when I finally psyched myself up to, to get in school, I'm going to be the oldest one in there. And oh my God. And I remember this guy walked in first class. There was a guy sitting in the front center of the classroom, and his hearing aid was going, because he can't turn up his hearing aid. And I was like, okay, well, at least I know I'm not the oldest one in here. But because I graduated high school with a 2.9, not even a 3.0. And so I was, just like I said, just so scared. And I remember asking this one group of people if they would, I said, is anybody interested in a study group? And so some people were like, yeah, I've been in a study group. So every semester I started asking for, study group. And I'm gonna end it on my school with this. So when I was working on my master's degree, I was doing it online because now I'm traveling a lot with my job. And I remember just going on looking at the names and stuff, and in the chat said, is anybody interested in a study group? There's one guy, I don't remember his name. I can't tell you what part of the world he lived in. And he was super smart as I learned as we were going on. I'm thinking, why is he in the study group? But my first semester was his last semester of this particular semester, and he contacts me 2 years later. He said, if memory serves me right, this is your last semester. And I'm just checking to see how everything went. I really enjoyed getting to know you that semester. Well, I was in the hospital next to my mom's bed. I was told my mom had 3 weeks to live, and it was on the second week. And I'm sitting there, one part of my computer, I'm doing her obituary and doing things. The other part, I'm trying to do my thesis, right? So I told the guy, I said, well, I'm at the hospital. My mom's dying. And he said, what is your thesis on? And I told him that next day when I got up, he must have been up all night researching. He sent me all of these topics with material. And I say this day, that guy was my angel.
Yes.
And I was able to graduate on time.
Can I ask you, had you known that when you did the study group with this guy, that he was so impacted by you trying to get people involved in the study group?
No.
Wow.
No.
That's awesome.
No. So, God, he takes care of us. When he knows our heart, knows our desire, all we have to do is just keep doing what we're doing. ask him. I'm forever telling people, I ask God for things.
Mhm.
That's like, didn't you want you? No, I asked for that. But be
Yeah.
intentional about what we ask for, right?
Be intentional. And just know that too, God does not promise that we will not go through hard times.
Mm-hmm.
He just promises he will walk with us the entire way, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And that reminded me of a situation in medical school. So I'm finally getting my confidence. I'm finally feeling like, oh, I can do this. And then I go through a breakup. And the breakup is with my first love, And to put this in context, this is a guy I knew from college. We dated from college until medical school. He is also in medical school at another place. His parents love me. In my mind, I'm like, oh, we about to do the Cosby Show. We're going to get married once we graduate. It's going to be amazing. And then, of course, I find out he's cheating on me. And so after we break up, my world, and it wasn't because of him. Now, and then I'm older. At the time, I was like, oh, this is so devastating. But it shook my confidence at that point because I was so sure in this relationship. In fact, it was one of the things that kind of helped motivate me to keep going in medical school because we both going to be doctors. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Me, him, and my sister, we all going to be doctors. But when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh. If I didn't know this person, if this person wasn't the person I thought he was, and if this person wasn't the person I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, what else do I not know?
I know.
Oh my gosh, it shook my confidence to the core, and I went through a huge depression. I'd never been in depression before. I never had depression in my life. But when I tell you I couldn't eat because things tasted like sand in my mouth, like I could not sleep. I was tired, I was exhausted, but I couldn't fall asleep. And then I failed my first class. I have never failed a class in my life. And I failed a class in medical school. And to put this in perspective, medical school has 2 tests, a midterm and a final.
Right.
You fail one, you fail. I failed a class. And at that point I said, oh my gosh, God, maybe this isn't for me. I don't know how I'm going to be able to focus. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And I remember, thankfully, I had an opportunity to make up the test and eventually pass the class. But during this depression, I remember taking the bus because we're in Chapel Hill. They have a free bus system and everybody takes the bus to campus. It's cheaper than driving. So on the bus. And I don't remember how I got on the bus. I actually don't even remember how I got out of bed that day because I remember being in such a depression that I did not want to move. I did not want to think. I did not want to do anything. I don't remember why I was going to school because it must have been something important because otherwise I wouldn't have gone. So I remember getting on the bus and just looking so just depressed. I was sad. Everything was gray. And this guy turns to me and he says, what a beautiful day it is outside, isn't it? And I didn't know this guy from anybody and people don't usually talk to me on the bus. So for him to say that, I was like, what? And then I looked outside. And when I tell you it was the most beautiful day outside, and in that moment, I knew that was God talking to me through that man saying, listen, look at the world I created for you. Look at what I have created just for you. I am here. You know what I'm saying? I am here. And at that point in life, I had to stop talking to him, right? Because I was so depressed. And so from that day on, I was like, you know what, Lord, you were with me always. And I promise I will not forget that. Because even after the guy exchanged that and I noticed everything and I was like, this is beautiful. I look back at him and I was like, was he hitting on me? Maybe he's hitting on me. Maybe he's just trying to talk. He didn't look back my way at all. Like it was literally,
about the day. Yeah. Remind. Yeah.
Yes. And so, so I say that to say again, life is not going to be easy for all of us, even when you are living your purpose, when you are walking in your purpose, but God is always with you. And when you remember that, when you hold on to that, it makes you have that peace even in the dark days.
Have you ever heard the poem Seasons, Reasons, in a Lifetime?
No.
I want you to Google that because it talks about things and people being in our life for a reason, for a season, and for a lifetime. And listen to you talking about your first love. My ex-husband, I remember I just, he's so wonderful. My daughter Kim's dad. He's so wonderful and da 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 da. Which I didn't know my daughter was a patient of yours.
Oh.
Kimberly Hudson. I'm saying her name.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize.
I know. I forgot to tell you that last
Small
wasn't there.
world.
Yeah, she's a patient of
Oh,
yours.
nice.
But I remember when we broke up, and I mean it's in my documentary. He was cheating, and we broke up, and I was like, oh my God. I thought I was a good wife, and am I not pretty enough? Am I not smart enough? How can he do this to me? And remember going to a counselor, and she was like, "What are you talking about?" And she told me to read that poem, and I read that, and Seasons, Reason, a Lifetime. And I'm gonna say this because I told Kimberly this when he and I were getting a divorce, that he was in my life for a reason. The reason was to bring her into my life. He was a reason and a season. She won't go away. So I always tell her she's a lifetime. Because she was 14 when we divorced.
Oh,
Kim is what, 42 now?
Aw,
Yeah. And she lives here. Her mom lives in Oklahoma. Her dad lives in Atlanta, but she's here. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
I tell people that poem, Seasons, Reasons, and a Lifetime. And it just kind of helps you put things into
It does.
perspective,
It does. It does. But and again, the devil's always there, right? And I'm sure in that moment with him cheating, it brought up some of that insecurity
Oh,
that we had,
yeah.
right? And you start blaming yourself. Well, maybe it was me. No.
Mhm.
So I'm glad.
No, sir, you missed out.
Exactly. But it was part of God's purpose for me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because who knows? You never may have met Mr.
My
Brown.
husband now. Exactly.
Yeah. So, man, but
And I always try to look at the positive in a situation because we can say one bad thing that happened and it's just like, but if you look at all of the other things you learned that brought you to even strength.
Yes.
Sometimes that we don't realize how strong we are independently. And with that, knowing how strong we are independently, when we get with whoever our helpmate is,
Yes,
our soulmate,
absolutely.
yeah, together,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Oh, it's
ain't
definitely
no stopping us. Yeah.
yes, it's prepared me for the marriage that I have now. I will say that if I did not go through that, I would not be married right now. I would not still be married right now. I'll say that much. So, no, everything happens for a reason. And I have learned too, and this is also through the medical school journey, through the relationship, through just getting older and just experiencing life, because life has not always been easy, especially practicing. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of work. But one of the things I've learned is the quicker I go to God, the less I suffer. Like the quicker I go to prayer, the quicker I lean in on Him, the less I have to spend time in suffering. You know what I'm saying? Not in bad seasons, but in suffering. And so my whole life has just been a blessing and a one lesson after the other. Lessons I hope to eventually pass on to my children.
And your children are how old now?
10 and 11. Yes. Yeah, both girls, 10 and 11. 15
Oh,
months apart.
I remember when you were pregnant with your first child, and
Yes.
I was crying inside because I said, I hope she doesn't stop practicing.
Yes.
And then when you came back, I said, okay.
Yeah.
And then you told me you're pregnant again. I was like, she's about to get on my nerves. If she tells me she's going to stop practicing.
Right. No. Look, these student loans would never make me stop practicing. But I love what I do too. At the end of the day, I feel like medicine is a calling, and this is what God has for me in my life. So
well, if you don't hear it enough, I'm going to tell you, I love my physician. I love that, even though those minutes, because, it's a business.
Right.
You have so many minutes. I feel like, and this is from my heart, I feel like that minute, however much time I get with you, where most people are saying, oh, I have a doctor's appointment. I'm like, oh, I get to go see Dr. Foster. Seriously, I love you. I always feel like I walk out, with, even if it's something that you said, okay, Karen, we're going to have to get this back up. But it's the way you make a person, your patients feel, this patient particularly. And the way I knew that you were my daughter's physician, because when I said I was coming there, my doctor's there, she said, who's your doctor? And I said, who you were. And she said, that's my doctor. And I said, well, she was mine first. But and I kept forgetting to tell you that.
I never realized that. I never, and that's why I love family medicine too, because I love seeing different family members. Because again, my upbringing and having my family around, not just my parents, but my extended family around, you start to see patterns. You know what I'm saying? Patterns in behavior, patterns in chronic illness, and I just feel so much more fulfilled when I get to take care of more than just one person. Because it impacts how you are as a parent, impacts how your children are, how you look at yourself, how you take care of yourself impacts future generations, right? So that's why I love family medicine. I feel like it's one of the specialties that allows you the closest relationship with your patients, lifelong relationship with your patients. So yeah.
So, what would you like to leave with this? Even a twin or a person that's going to school, or what would you like to leave with our viewers? And I want you to look right in that camera and give somebody a
Hmm.
word of wisdom.
Put God first. Put God first in everything that you do. He will make sure that it is right for you and He will hold your hand the entire way. If you don't know God, maybe now you should learn.
I
seek,
love that.
seek to people who do know Him, and don't lean onto your own understanding either. There is Bible is there. It is a great love story that tells you who God's character is. And if you are just hearing it for third hand, you're not going to get the whole experience. So I think that is the most important thing. Put God first, follow Him, lean into Him, and He will see you through.
Thank you. That was beautiful. And thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
Thank you.